I'd like to welcome everybody here. Fellowship Hall and everybody joining us via Zoom. We'd like to go over to the upper left-hand corner and click on your name and maybe add your call sign. Kim will read that out to us when we come to that part to catch up with folks on Zoom. So I'll start with Will. You want to, sir?
Will, KR4CT, I'm the secretary.
Dan, WBZ throughout, treasurer.
Bruce, before we go you, I'm not really, did you Rick,
Lauren, W4 LEW Vice President.
Tom, K4CT.
Harper, KR4 CPL.
John, WB4HX.
Adam, KQ4 PH.
Dennis, K4DAF. Robert, KC4MK.
John, KC4WT.
Armin, WA1QQO.
Bob, KU4GIK. Dan, N4DOB.
John, KS4QC. Steve, W4SB. Bill, and Bill is a guest tonight. Welcome, Bill.
We got one over here with.
And
Alex, Quebec. Alex.
Okay, online we have Brian, A1CMS, Ed, W4YWA, Patrick, I still don't remember your call sign, Patrick Boland.
K4PKB.
He's on there, AM4IBQ. Dave, K04BEM, John Anderson, W4ZAK, Robert, W4BMO, Ron, Q4LDA, Lynn Grant, again, I don't remember your call, before the, okay, and Bill, with the N4WLC, and Ron, KQ4LEA. We got Tom coming in, KG4BIZ.
thank you, Jim. Welcome, everybody. When we sent out our newsletter, the minutes of the last meeting are included. And I was wondering if there's any revisions or corrections to the minutes. Any necessary? There are no changes necessary. I will. Start. Any opposed? All in favor? Mr. Bruce, so we'll move next to the treasurer's report.
Okay.
Is this your real Apollo?
Okay, oh, somebody's trying to join. Okay.
CFPs.
$18,409.14. We had two dues come in, which would be $44, and we had 4 seminars, which was $40. So there's $84 that came in. Bad news is we had to pay rent for the D-Star replacement stuff, $341.30. The last meeting, we voted to give the MRA for the repeated repair $2,000, so they paid that. And we had fees for PayPal of $4.62. So we lost $2,345.92, leaving us at $16,147.22. I have one new member, who is Nora Ozzie, KQ4YLE. She is a general. She's one of the, what are they called themselves?
Holds out the hand chicks.
The hand chicks. She's one of the hand chicks, so, can I have a motion to, have her? Member? Second. Super. She's a good girl. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Super. You can tell her she's a member of our family.
He should be president.
Next on our agenda is the school update. Bruce, do you have
Yeah,
something you'd like to share?
well, almost classes are done, so I just thought you ought to know the names of all the folks that did the work. And just so I don't miss my wrote them down. So tech is done by Dave White. Dan Brown could be with him on that, but he ran into some medical problems, so Dave ran the whole thing in terms of tech. Then Dave Stevens and Adam is here somewhere, there you are, did general. And Dennis and Will did, Dennis Farmer and Will Jackson did ethics. And so we had a good full bunch. Robert Orndorff did the, antenna modeling. And then I did the remote control station, so we had, and Michael did DMR, I don't have that listed. I'm sorry, I missed his name, he did DMR, the first time I've done it in a long time. So we had a good bunch of seminars, that's what been going. So these are folks who kind of are at it every week for anywhere from 3 to 10 weeks, so they do a particularly hard job, good job for us. Helps us to be the teaching club. And so far, unfortunately, I have not anybody else who wants to step up to mentor these new folks, so I guess they will go mentorless.
No, I'll mentor somebody.
All right,
If you know somebody that wants to be mentored.
no, I'll get, we did a group.
Okay, well, I'll do it.
We did 5.
If we can find somebody one.
Yeah, okay, so I'll get with you.
Okay.
Would like to bring up, when we get 543 back on the air, we have a new ham net for the text, whatever, on 14543 on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. Right now, we don't have a repeater on.
Yeah, we'll make a little bit of contact, not a whole lot, but the problem is that the new hands that I'm dealing with are kind of spread from what far south to far west end, that's what we think, so.
Until we get the repeater on. So,
Yeah, well, I'm in release. I'm there.
Good. All right, let's talk after.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm glad we were able to recognize all those instructors that dedicate their time to those classes. Yep. So I don't think there's anything new to report on the D-Star repeater. Well, Wynn's on the line. Wynn can unmute and come in if there's anything new to report on our D-Star repeater. We didn't unmute.
When you unmute.
Do we like the audio here?
I don't really hear other people.
We heard, we did hear something for that, so we've got the audio here. When we must have a muting issue right now.
No, the microphone's been plugged in properly.
My icon is gray.
No, he's unmuted. I don't see him talking.
He was
He
trying.
is talking.
No, I mean, I don't see his, anybody good at exact reading? Yeah.
The microphone maybe malfunctioning.
We might have to get back to you a little later, Ben. Doing, remote station, everything is up and running? Yeah, as far as I know.
Oh,
The remote
we
station.
have an issue with, there's something going on the internet. We can't get to the remotely controlled power switch. We can still get to the radio and turn it on and off, but we can't throw the power switch off. And what ends up happening is if it gets hung, every so often, some gremlin will get into the computer, we can't use it anymore. We have to go in through the remote switch, turn off the computer, and bring it back up again. So we can't do that unless we come here. And we talked to the guy who is the IT fellow for the church. And he said he was gonna check on it to see if there was some sort of connection there, because it's indicating that some problem in the IT connection, internet connection. So it's still usable. I've got on it and used it, but we have a little issue with being able to reboot it from remote. So that's where that is.
Okay. Net activity, we have 9 nets in the area, from 6 meters, 2 meters, and, to the 40-meter band. John Pittsford, has a net on the second Thursday. I think it's 72:58, approximately at 7:30.
Absolutely.
Okay. Tom is on 80 on 80 on Monday evenings, and then during the week on 40.
Yeah, we have about 38, 58 or thereabouts on Monday night, and, I started at 7:30 and go on to however long people want to talk. And, 72:38 on the mornings, at 8 o'clock.
And that's Monday through Friday.
That's Monday through Friday. That, I'm not in control of that, but we're on there. Steve and I.
With folks in the club by the nets. So anything, any local club activity announcements? I think I have some here. Let's see, the Old Virginia Hams Amateur Radio Club, their ham radio tailgate party on June 7th. It's Manassas. That's Ham Fest, and then the 6-meter net group. They are in September, I think it's September 12th, is when their next tailgate fest would be. Yeah. September 13th, excuse me, at 8 o'clock from 8 to noon at the Hackman Memorial Church. It's going to be coming up in September.
And we've got Special Olympics before we are our next meeting, so.
Right,
So
so,
6th and 7th, I think it is.
yeah, so I have I sent an email, wanted email to everyone. And I want you to remind you that we have the Special Olympics, and Darren is looking for a few additional operators to support the communications of the Special Olympics. So if you can get in touch with Darren, his email address was in the his address was in my email. That you can follow up with Darren. Bear with me for flip pages and get to that page. But I definitely want to cover that tonight. Darren Faulkner, KG4 INW. It's Darren Faulkner, no spaces. It's Darren Faulkner at gmail.com. But he's asked, once again, we've done this in the past year, and a number of people here in the club have participated. So I wanted to, encourage you to get them a phone line, give a good opportunity to get some of the new camps together. They'll usually pair up and get together. So somebody with some experience.
That's not fun.
That would be a nice opportunity to get them out. They're probably doing that too. What else is coming up? Field Day is coming up. How many here are in RATS, the RATS club? We're usually invited. Our members are invited, and that's another new campus opportunity. The instructors will know those new camps, and it would be nice if the instructors would invite them to come but don't want to cause any friction because we're invited to come. you'll know better, how they're organized. But, to be able to, invite them, if they come and see somebody they're familiar with, especially those instructors they've been with for the last, maybe 10 weeks or so, then that would encourage them to come out and they would be able to observe feedback. And I think the rest does an excellent job of pretty good.
When is
The fourth, Saturday, and Sunday of June.
Isn't the 28th and 29th?
Yep.
You know. We also give exams that month, so.
Next. Well, we mentioned the Metropolitan Repeater Association. We did get a nice thank you note for our donation. And I was just talking to Carmen, and that work it should be happening very soon. Weather dependent. So hopefully that can happen, and they can repair the feed line. That's happening. Is there any old business that we need to discuss? Any new business? Any announcements? Rob?
We're going to, have a small representation of our club at the Baker Fair. I found out about this through they said, we've been invited to go to the collegiate school Maker Fair, and are we gonna go? Nah, it's not very long, and we don't have enough people and everything, and so I thought, okay, well, I think we need to get invited to that, so I just wrote to their head of communications and told them about RARC and what we represent, and that we're the teaching club, and you know, we're getting involved in lots of STEAM and STEM kind of things, and we are trying to establish a youth outreach, and they were just so happy that we're going to be there. So it's really small. It's only from 10:30 till 1:30, and four of us there. We're going to have a photo station, SDR, RTL, and that's it, because that's what they asked for. And the kids will be both displaying their science projects and things that they made, and some of their crafts. They'll be selling those, and then we'll have 4 people there just to talk to the kids and demo some things. And then, you know, from that, something else might happen.
Yeah.
So that,
Thank you for doing that for us. And I believe, Will's going to join you.
yeah,
And
Will, Adam, Lauren, and I.
Okay. Thank all of you for
Whoever-
doing that for us. You've been representing my representation for the club there. And it's a great opportunity, we might catch some youth that, you know, join us.
Well, they're looking to expand their STEAM and STEM things. They have, I'm just estimating ballpark around $35 million worth of athletic buildings, fields, equipment,
Yeah.
things, you know, travel
Sure.
and all that. And they have a little tiny room, like from where Will is over into that corner is their fab lab. And they don't have anything in there. So I think we can be a presence there eventually. So
Okay.
that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for stepping in. So another topic I had is I need your help with is a program in the future. And in February, we talked about programs that you'd like to see. Logbook of the world was mentioned. And so Lauren could do that for us. But we were interested in how many. You know, some of you are perhaps may be familiar with that presentation. And we were wondering how many in RARC logging and would be interested in doing more with Logbook of the World. So we want to get a feeling, you know, how much, you know, if we do it, and how much deep detail would we go into? So if, you know, is it something we do our meeting program. Or maybe you want rather have a separate class on it, and Lauren would be willing to do that. So, any thoughts you'd like to share with us or give us an idea of how we want to handle that?
Since I'm dealing with new hams and a little bit with people who just upgraded, a lot of the world is mystery to them, so having a presentation on it, and then if we get interest, then we can make a class out of it. But just, what it is, how you use it, examples of it, that's what it is. I'm a heavy user of it, not as heavy user as you are, of course, but I almost got China the other day. Boy, I thought, I'm gonna get this guy, no, not China, Australia, in South Wales. Here's this VK, I'm gonna go with this guy, I just pounced, and these big guns came in and just walked me out, so that's the end of that.
Was arrows on the side there?
Yeah. So I think it was 17 meters or something, anyway. So I don't have a VK in there.
So aside from the new hams that don't know anything about it, are there anybody else that got questions or would encourage us to do that? Would you be in favor of us doing a program, show of hands, how many would like to see that? Sure. So, 2 hands.
Would that include like what kind of logging software to use to get it up to?
No,
No, it kind of that's kind of independent.
yeah,
Oh,
it was an hour presentation without even talking about it.
Well, and I tell some of the new ones, you can start off using QRZ. You can our QRZ,
Yeah.
a place you can enter it in. It's not as nice as being hooked up to the radio, but
Well, I mean, to be honest, what Rob suggests makes sense. But I'm only familiar with one logging program, so we'd have to kind of get a little, like a panel with people using different programs together.
Right.
And we could kind of demo it for the newer licensees or anyone who wants to come.
John?
I don't know, I guess I'm kind of old fashioned, even though I'm pretty new to this. I like QSLs. It always used to be said that it was the ultimate, courtesy to your QSL partner to QSL at the end. And of course, it used to cost a first class or at least a postcard stamp. Anybody who has actually sent a postcard of late probably knows just how expensive it is. It is an arm and a leg if you start sending these things overseas. So there are many ways around this. If you still like getting cards from your partner, those nice pictures and perhaps a comment that round up an enjoyable QSO, whatever it is. What about a few words every now and again on EQSL and the other electronic free QSL services? But now, well, they're not quite a postcard, but they come close. You get a picture, you get a thing that looks like a QSL card, kind of. Everything except your opposite number's handwriting on it. I don't know if anybody ever uses those, but Logbook of the World, I think most people who log in, I think, use, but not all the others like Clublog and of course QRZ.
If we want to try and collaborate with Lauren, I know I actually signed my Logbook of the World logs with QRZ because it kind of accomplishes what I want to do. So if there's people interested in like Logbook of the World in conjunction with signing things, because I find it easier to sign with something else besides just uploading the TQSL. So we could almost like collaborate with a couple different people who do different things, if that's what people are interested in.
well, if we have a big enough interest, then it's good we do a seminar.
Yeah, but it would be a longer seminar. We'd have to do like an hour on logging.
And then whatever, 2
Yes.
of the
Yeah,
other.
because I'm just not familiar with. I'm sure it's easy to log in QRZ. The thing that makes Logbook of the World just more complicated is all the security around Because that's the one that you get awards from. And so they don't want people cheating, so there's a lot of protocol.
I think it would be helpful to know if people are more interested in logging in general or the security issues with signing up for logbook of the world.
Well, it's not really the security issues. If you,
Right.
I think you're using the logbook of the world because you're chasing an award like Worked All States,
Or DXC.
CXCC.
Right.
And so they want to give those awards out for legitimate accomplishments. So, anyway, but you don't just log into Logbook of the World as you make QSOs and type them in. I mean, it's,
Right.
you upload them from your regular program.
And so it's not a logging program per se.
It is.
Okay, do you have any other questions for the group, Lauren, what we think about?
Well, I just would think if anybody's interested in being on this panel of different log, like Camera Deluxe seems to be a big one.
They use the CQR logs.
We can have 4 or 5 people.
And there are other
Yeah,
people
overview.
on the telephone and their tablets.
So if anybody's interested in helping, let's collaborate and we can tell Daryl, like, maybe we can run it in the fall or something.
It might require two directors, logbook of the world. That's probably a program in itself, and then how to use it, and then how to connect logging programs to it. And maybe four different logging programs, maybe that would be the second program, something like that. We'll give it some more thought, but thanks for your input. We'll work on that, because we're really interested in programs that, the club members, really interested. Any other announcements? Any show and tell? Alex?
I recently managed to acquire this microwave port communications dish. It's marked antenna, think about a little bit. And at least it came out well after cleaning, but I don't have any equipment that transmits off between 1990 and 2-something 10 megacycles per second. So if anyone has any microwave band communications equipment that they'd like to get rid of or sell, let me know. And maybe help me put a tower on this thing, just for some of my own radio band experiments on that. Radio experiments on that band. Sorry, my mind is foggy because of the rain. Thank you. Thank you for running the audience. I also gonna need some mounting hardware. The plant we're missing.
We turn for a little break, intermission, and then we'll come back and program will be by Brian Justin. And we'll be looking at some of his achievements, 25 gigahertz. So it's
Right, that's a smaller way than this microwave, which would be modifications in the Bible.
do I have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Aye. And 10 minutes, we'll be back in 10 minutes. Ninth program is it's titled 25 gigahertz and above. The background is when people across the line adjustments of the duration of the website. People are saying, gentlemen, our meeting. So when they come across Brian Short page, and it was so impressive what he was able to achieve, and picture one of his microwave transceivers that he pointed it out to me, and I think it's so interesting. I'd really like to talk with him. We decided we'd reach out and see if he'd be great for us and Sure, no, he said he'd be honored to do that, so I asked him just to, talk to us a little bit about his radio journey and, how he was able to achieve that, move into the microwave, range, and any tips that should anybody be interested, like Alex mentioned, you know, he's got his dish, he'd like to put it to work. So hopefully, Brian can impart some wisdom there. So I'm gonna turn it over to Brian, if, you can go ahead and unmute Brian and join us.
Okay. My audio okay? You gentlemen, copy fine?
Yeah, great.
All right. I'll do a screen share here. Let me chat first. Again, my name is Brian Justin. My call sign is WA1 Zulu Mike Sierra. I am originally from Vermont and moved down to Virginia, just outside the Lynchburg area, about 35 years ago. So I'm 35 years into a 3-year excursion. So I like to use a little humor in my presentations. And if the club, I know you talked in the meeting session, you're looking for future presenters and all that. If you have to invite someone like me, boy, you guys are really in trouble. So, but anyway, I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much. And I have a PowerPoint presentation. There are more slides than I wanted to originally present, but that's okay because a lot of them are just images with a couple of words next to them. And I'll run through them fairly quickly, and then we can do some Q&A afterwards. It would take me several hours to be able to cover all of the whole thing from start to finish. This has been a multi-decade adventure. As my QRZ bio says, I was first licensed in 1976 as a novice, and it was 2 years non-renewable back then, as some of you may know. And anyway, ended up with an extra by the end of high school and then on to college. And I have a bachelor's in electrical engineering from the University of Vermont. So if I can navigate this and do a screen share, and RF I can do great, but you know, I'm have to say that I am sometimes completely, totally IT challenged. So let me switch to this and full screen.
Got it.
All right, looks good. All right, so here we go. So I tried to come up with a name for this, and so I just said operating on the millimeter wave bands. We always talk about bands in terms of wavelength. So 40 meters, 80 meters, 20 meters, 10 meters, 2 meters, 6 meters, etc., 70 centimeters. Well, as you start going higher and higher in frequency, the wavelength starts to become measured in millimeters. And this is where I think the highest, from a technology perspective, can be had. Also, conversely, those that are into these higher frequency bands are also involved in, like myself, the two lowest bands, which is 137 kilohertz and 473 kilohertz, or the 2200 and 630 meter bands. So with that, I'm going to go out with the technical, and so I'm going to get in with the operating. So for me, it all really started in 1996. Prior to that, for about 10 years before, being from New England, I was a member of the W2S Ed Portable 1 VHF UHF contest group up on Mount Greylock during the ARRL June, August, and September contests. And it was back in that era, VHF contests were very competitive. And it was all about grids and the number of grids you could get, because the grids are multipliers in the scoring scheme that the league has. So I was challenged by one of the guys in the group, hey, you want to do something on 47 because we've already got 24 going. I said, all right, let me give it a shot. Well, it didn't stop there. So it took me in the end, I don't know, 15 years later. And now a lot of these records have been challenged and some have been broken around the world. These were all world DX records on 47 gigs, 75 gigs, 120 gigs, which is replaced with the 122 gigahertz band by the commission, 134 gig, which replaced the 145. But I operated on all those bands that are no longer bands. 241 gigs, and then above 275, there are no current allocations globally. It's sort of a no man's land, although that will probably change from a global perspective as the sub-millimeter wave, meaning above 300 gigs, starts to be carved up globally for Internet of Things, very short-range wireless, high-speed video, high-definition video streams, etc. It also has earned me, but under the call sign of W2, I've said, Portable 4, the VHF UHF Century Club Award, serial number 1, for 75, 47, 75, 122, 134, 45, and 240. And looking back on this, I will tell you this one thing. Experience is only something you get after you really needed it. After doing all of that, in 2003, I was awarded the very first Worked All Bands Award by the Northeast Weak Signal Society. And the league and other organizations have no such awards. And it took 20 years later in 2023 for another couple of guys, ironically from Vermont, KT1J and Mike N1JEZ, to get WAB serial numbers 2 and 3. And I was asked to present those at Microwave Update in Connecticut that year in 2023. What's the challenge on these high bands? Well, I always say the weather is the great equalizer. Water vapor is key. As you go higher and higher in frequencies, the water vapor in the air, in other words, damp air, is a great absorber of these of all these bands. Some bands have more than others. I have a whole series of charts that are that WA1MBA hosts on his microwave website for a loss chart like this in loss per kilometers based on dew point. So you really need to watch the dew point. Cold, dry, great, sweaty, hot, summertime, not so much. Although some people are now experimenting over water paths of the Great Lakes, and a couple of VE3s have done some fantastic job making some new DX records just here in the spring. So that's kind of a new way of approaching things. So again, the weather's a great equalizer, and those of you that are pilots or into weather forecasting would recognize this very esoteric graph. This is what's known as a skew T chart. The National Weather Service and other places collect this data with balloons, weather balloons that they launch usually twice a day from every National Weather Service or NOAA weather office in the country. And these two curves here, this represents temperature, and this represents the dew point. And you can see that there's temperature here, dew point here. There's a temperature inversion that takes here. Normally these curves go up, and it's really confusing because these are the chart is not XY, it's curved. And it gives you winds, the loft, and all that data. But you're looking for these temperature inversions, and you can get millimeter wave signals on very high frequencies trapped in between these tiny little layers of dry air where there's no water vapor, and they'll propagate for tens or even 100+ miles easily. You can also get national weather maps that show a dew point at a given time. This is from December of 2005, and you can see that here in Virginia we had some cold air coming down. Meanwhile, up in Minnesota, they had a bunch of damp air coming up. So you kind of have to be somewhat of a meteorologist if you're going to really try to exploit some DX records. But that's not the only thing. Getting on the bands is probably most important. And so part of that is you have to, no matter what your gear is, you have to sort of pick out your paths. So sometimes in the summer, I'll just go hiking in the Blue Ridge around here, and I'll find a couple of mountaintops. And there's all kinds of things now. Hey, what's that? All kinds of hiking and folks that are out in the woods. Path modeling programs to pick up a couple of hills or a couple of mountains and how far away they are. I know in the Richmond area, and of course, you're in the plains, and so there's some small hills. But if you certainly go west, young man, as Horace Greeley said, here towards the Blue Ridge, it can definitely have an advantage. So very quickly, items that I use, you have to have a very accurate compass. And this is a surveyor's grade compass, and it will give me a quarter of a degree resolution. You have to factor in the fact that the magnetic poles of the Earth move. So there's something called the declination, which is the error between true north and magnetic north. So again, you have to kind of be a surveyor as well as a weather watcher. Good pair of marine grade binoculars. Sometimes they have compasses built into them. Good optics. Barometer. You want to find if the air pressure is changing. And for example, I may drive 3 hours to a hilltop down near Withville, Virginia, and by the time I get down there, the weather has shifted, drastically in those 3 hours, and get down there and find that the forecast has completely shifted. And I can get halfway, see the barometer, turn around, and come back. There's also something called the hydrometer. This is used in the HVAC industry. This will also measure dew point and temperature directly. These are rather cheap. You can get them on Amazon. If you're going outside and you don't like the cold, you got to have these. Your chemical hand warmers. I buy them by the box of 10 or 15 at a time. Because if your hands and toes are cold and your head's cold, the rest of you will be cold. One of the other things as you get up higher and higher in frequency is the frequency stability of your transmitter and your receiver. So without getting into all these details here, you're looking for something that is a frequency reference that is both stable and accurate. And so I have a very high-end commercial oscillator in here in this die-cast box with a lot of insulation, and then I place that inside of one of these Coleman coolers. Somebody looked at me and said one time in the local club and said, "Well, you transporting body organs to to a hospital?" And I said, "No, it's just my oscillator." And there's a couple of gel cells in there to keep it running for for almost 24 hours without being having shore power or back in the shack. Without getting too far into it, the digital software, the digital modes, the digital signal processing that you can use is just incredible. Here's an example of just some simple Morse code on and off. By ear, it sounds kind of noisy, but if you adjust the scan rate and all that, you can actually pull the Morse code out right as dots and dashes. And as someone who loves CW by ear, CW by sight is a whole new thing. It's a new skill that I had to learn. This is a picture of one of the 78 gig stations that I built, that I used. And one of the questions I know that Daryl and other folks asked is, well, all right, when you start off, what is more difficult as you get up higher and higher in frequency? Well, usually what you have to do is, again, you start off with a very low frequency and you keep synthesizing, multiplying, tripling, quadrupling, all the way up through to get some higher power. And as you go higher and higher in frequency, I found something almost paradoxical. The amount of transmitter power that I need or needed for records on 78 gigahertz, I need even more than that on 80 gigahertz to triple it to 240. So when you build a station like this and you've made your contacts, you set your DX records, you've gotten your grids for awards, you start looking at it and you cannibalize it for the next band. So it seems like a shame, but again, you're doing this on a hobby budget. To purchase something like this, commercially made would probably be in today's economy, probably, $30,000-$40,000 a piece. And I'm not kidding. I've probably got right here, probably about $300 in this station. I've also found when you earlier was talking about makerspace, long before the makerspace, concept existed. If you can befriend someone at a local machine shop, this is what you can get. This is a 12-inch parabolic dish. I found a machine instructor at the local community college who was teaching classes to one of the manufacturing companies here in town, and they just got a new 16-inch CNC lathe, and he needed a project to demonstrate the lathe and show how to operate it. So I found this ingot of aluminum in a scrapyard and gave it to him, and he charged me just the couple $100 for a brand new radius cutter. This has not been polished. This is the actual machine cut right here. And this is for 240 gigs and up. Um, these struts and rods, supports and all that, I did that with my little mini mill and mini lathe here on the bench at home. So it helps to have some mechanical capability or, mechanical skills as well. And this is what you see when I'm operating out in the cold along the Blue Ridge Parkway or something out of the family minivan at the time. This was on a different station on 134 gigs. There's the oscillator in the van, keeping warm, an ICOM radio, gel cell, CW key, headphones. And of course, you got to have an HD to talk to the guy that you can, barely see. And we always joke about having a deer jacking light take with you, because when it's at night, you want to be able to see the hilltop where the other guy is on. So you need to be able to shine that. Nowadays, LED lights are just incredible. And again, this is from 15, 20 years ago. An LED would just completely be more than you'd ever need from an incandescent. Talking about weather and kind of putting it all together, here's a path, 114 kilometer, 51-mile path back to the Blue Ridge up Apple Orchard Mountain here, and I'm down just a little bit outside of Marion, Virginia. And the question is, why didn't this path work? Well, as the sunset started to occur, you see this purple haze out here? That's a temperature inversion. And that inversion was actually above us. And so this is a 3.5-hour drive from this spot all the way back to my house in Forest, Virginia. And it took 3 trips for me down here, 3 winters in a row to finally get that world DX record. And then Pete, W4WWQ, was an hour away from town. He's up, you can't see it because it's in the haze, but Apple Orchard Mountain is right out here on the horizon. And finally, if you do all this stuff and your wife doesn't leave you or send you off to an institution thinking you're crazy, this is Tom Williams, WNMBA, presenting me with the Worked Bands Award in 2003 at their annual conference in New England. So I ran through that pretty fast, and I'll stop the screen share and I'll take any questions. And again, hope that wasn't
Hey,
too.
Brian,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Lauren, W4LEW. Define DX in this frequency space.
Well, the answer is that depends. Okay, and seriously, in what band you're on. State of the art today, we're probably measuring DX in tens or maybe 100 miles. So now as you go higher in frequency, of course, it's going to get worse. Worse meaning shorter distance. For example, the pseudo-formal definition of DX among all the millimeter wave or microwave band operators is 1 kilometer. So on 403 gigs, I just barely made 1.4 kilometers.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah, that put it in perspective for you? I mean, it's as they say, size is relative. That's the problem.
I have a question, just W4BRU.
Yes.
This is all point to point, prearranged connections, that sort of thing. You arrange with somebody to contact them.
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, that's correct. So there's no repeaters. We're not doing any reflections off of anything. This is pure, through the troposphere at best. And the Earth curvature also comes into account when you start getting out to 50, 60, 70 miles. So Now, if you were to run, for example, and you can buy these off the shelf, 1 watt amplifier at 47 gigs. Now you're starting to talk about doing knife edge diffraction over non-line of sight paths. Now your DX shrinks, but you can both point to the top of a hill. And on 10 gigs, one of the very common things that happens almost every weekend now is rain scatter. Turns out that raindrops are absolutely almost perfect reflectors of 10 gigahertz, which is why a lot of the commercial microwave people don't like that. Their bands are up at the upper 10, 11 to 12 gigs, and that's called rain fade for them. That's why your DirecTV, the early versions of a lot of Dish and DirecTV, didn't work when it was raining outside because it was a straight line of sight pass to the satellite. But if you're going at an angle, you can reflect off it.
So when you reflect, what kind of distances can you get?
Probably the premier operator in the U.S. is W8BYA. His name is Geddes. He's out in Ohio, and the Northern Lights Microwave Society. He's got, I think, over 75 grids on 10 gigs from rain scatter. He's running about 10 to 15 watts. So they're pointing at thunderheads that are up at 40, 50,000 feet.
But he's got some distance left.
I'm sorry, say again, please.
He's getting some distance there.
Oh, yes, he is, without a doubt. He'll work 2-3 states away. But again, that's on 10 gigs.
Right.
What's happening is as technology has started to move at a rapid pace, and we live in a wireless world. And I have to, confess, I work in the commercial RF industry as well, so I see both sides of it. But what's happening with cellular technology, parts, devices, IC chips that are now pretty much a dime a dozen were just not even available at any price 15 years ago. In terms of getting something off the shelf from DigiKey or Mauser or Arrow Electronics that'll operate at 50 gigs. Now, as someone once said, can a Homo sapien take that part and solder it on a board? Maybe. So it also helps to have some contacts and folks in the industry. Those reference oscillators that I got, if you tried to buy them today or even back then, they were probably about $6,000 to $7,000 a piece. And there's a very small company called Wenzel Associates in Austin, Texas. And Charles Wenzel is one of the IEEE premier gurus of low phase noise oscillators. And so I just cold called him. And I said what I'm doing. And he said, gosh, if I need an oscillator with that spec, I'd call it my little baby. I said, yeah, but I need 2, 1 for each station. And so Charles, who's not a ham, but also is a hobbyist and he's the owner of his company. He said, well, I'll tell you what, if you don't mind giving me, footnote credit on your PowerPoints that you present at the amateur conferences, I'll sell you a pair of oscillators at my cost. And at that time, it was about buying 2 nice high-end HF rigs. So how could I pass that up?
Brian, this is
Yes.
Daryl coming up forever. Is there a source that you're interested in starting to move up, engaging above? Is there a source where you could buy surplus equipment and start building?
eBay.
Yeah, eBay. Now, yeah, you got to be careful with that now because I can tell you, eBay, the stuff is still there. However, since the IRS has now clamped down on eBay, and I don't know what the limit is now, but I think if you sell a single Tootsie Roll for 50 cents on eBay, you get a 1099 at the end of the year. Because the threshold used to be, $10,000, $5,000, $2,000, $1,000, and now, so what that's done is that's what used to be a piece of waveguide for 20 bucks now costs me 60, the same exact thing. So you have to be, I say, a certified dumpster diver. Now test equipment, that's a whole nother topic. You can use the other, you have to, well, in my case, I had to build 2 of everything, one for me and one for the guy that's operating with me. So for that, I would have to use the other station as the piece of test equipment. So I'd build a transmitter on one side, a receiver on the other, and then maybe use a 3 gig spectrum analyzer off of eBay to look at some IF frequencies and start tuning the transmitter on one side of the shack in the basement, receiver on the other, and see how I can optimize them. There are also some online dealers. Western Test out in Wyoming is a millimeter wave used part supplier to the millimeter wave commercial industry. Now his prices are not exactly Hamfest prices, but it may be 2 or 3 times that. But if you need it and you don't have $5,000, maybe you can get it for 500. I guess it's like anything in this hobby. You start off small, you start off slow, and you make your first contact across the room, and then across the backyard, and then across the park, and you keep working on it. Best thing to do is there are so many groups IO forums out there for microwave groups all over the country. By far the most common and the original is the one that Tom Williams run. It's known as the microwave email reflector. It's not a groups IO, it's just an old-fashioned email reflector. And you can look him up at wa1mikebravoalpha.org.
Yes, you can't go to DX Engineering or HRO. You have to find
No,
other
no,
sources.
no. In fact, I was teasing those guys last year at Hamvention that, Jace, I said, when are you going to come out with a 76 gig transverter that you can buy? Now that said, I want to show you something. This company was in Germany, but it was bought by a commercial company. This is the DB6NT. Whoops, sorry, my motion sensing light went out. There we go. This is a 47 gig, 100 milliwatt transverter with 2 horn antennas. This will run you about $600 right here. It uses a 2 meter IF.
What are you feeding that with?
I'm sorry, say again?
What frequency are you feeding the transverter with?
Oh, it's there's an 8 gig LO that comes in here. He sells a synthesizer for it, and it's a 2 meter IF out of the top. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the depth of focus here with my laptop, and the autofocus on this thing doesn't want to. Yeah. So for $500-600, you can get this. Now, of course, with all the tariffs going on, prices are fluctuating. But this was made by Michael, DB6NT. He ran Kune Electronics, started as a garage shop business. He retired a couple of years ago and sold it off to a commercial millimeter wave company, and they seem to be losing interest in the amateur market, unfortunately. So whatever they're selling like this is really just leftover stock, and a lot of us are trying to get him to, or not him, but the owner, now commercial company, to keep making parts for the amateur millimeter wave operators. To put it in perspective, and I don't see this so much at HF, but certainly on the bands from 2 meters and up, if you're doing real DX like moon bounce or kilowatt amplifiers, the Europeans seem to be willing to pay 3 or 4 times what the Americans are willing to pay. So I can buy a 10 gig, 20 watt amplifier off the shelf from a small European amateur company, but I'm going to pay $8,000 for it. And I'm not quite sure why that is. It has to be a cultural thing. And not being a world traveler, but only a little bit, I don't quite understand it, but nevertheless, prices do vary. There's some folks in Australia that have had some excellent kits and semi kits for reasonable prices. So you really have to just look around. Google is your friend.
What is your next goal? Your next station you're working on now, your next,
Well, I've got
achieve?
something. Yeah, my next goal. I've got plans for a 47 gig 1 watt beacon up on the Blue Ridge. I have all the parts right. I have to get into weatherproof box and get it up on the tower, where I have my repeaters as well. I also have some 600 gig gear that I want to make an initial QSO with. And once a year, there's an organization called Microwave Update. It's always in North America. Last year it was in Canada, but it's going to be in Arizona this fall in October, and that's usually where everybody gets together. We certainly welcome anybody that has any interest at all. And you can again look it up on the web at microwaveupdate.org, and it moves around. It'll maybe next year it'll be here somewhere on the East Coast. And besides that, I think my next challenge, I just had an email exchange with Joel Harrison, who's now the representative for the Region 2 IARU for the United States. And I'm going to talk to Joel out at Dayton next weekend because they want my help to work with the ITU to try to make new amateur allocations above 275 gigahertz at the global level. So I guess I'm becoming sort of a politician rather than an operator at this point. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions for Brian?
Can you hear me, Brian?
Yes, I can, Will. Good.
This is a little off topic, but some friends of mine say that they have relied on beacons that you have maintained for years, and wonder if you could comment on the current status of any beacons that you are currently operating.
Right. Yeah, they are QRT right now. And the reason for that is we did suffer some rime ice damage up on the mountain. And right now, time is the thing that I have the least of. I have an entire replacement commercial Yagi. I have a couple guys in the club that are also certified tower climbers, and we'll go up there and we'll swap them and get them going here. I want to get it done sometime in June. I don't know if it'll be before the June contest. So I'm going to try real hard. I also have an experimental 4-meter beacon. 4 meters is a European band, and that's non-amateur in the U.S. So I say experimental, meaning we're not operating under Part 97, but under Part 5 of the FCC rules. And I just renewed that license for another 2 years. The max you can renew it is for 2, and that's on 70.005, and it runs 3 kilowatts of ERP, and it's aimed at Europe. And several years ago, it was heard via 3-hop E-skip in Sicily. That was just plain old CW. And as the E-clouds moved west, which they always do, they follow the movement of the sun. The DX was Sicily. Trying to get this in the right order now. Someone in Germany, France, and then the UK. And that was it. So I've got a little stack of QSL cards. Actually, they're SWL cards because I'm only set up licensed to do one-way transmissions. That 70 megahertz is still, TV broadcast spectrum here in the U.S. So I had to get permission from the National Association of Broadcasters to obtain that license because they own that band. So if a Channel 4 TV goes on the air here, I'm QRT.
Anybody else have any questions for Brian?
Yes, Alex, Can for QGQ. In regards to hardware mounting, specifically the antenna when using a parabolic dish, onto an antenna mast or similar, for the, say between 1990 and 2350 megacycles per second. How do you manage to mount those antennas, onto the tower? Is it just bolt on, or do you have to have big braces and like?
Well, since all my stuff is portable, I use a tripod, camera tripod, and I can get some, commercial broadcast tripods used, or a surveyor's tripod. But the way you mount it is however you can attach to the dish without deforming it. And sometimes you have to machine a block that will go right in the dead center of the dish, and that block may have to have a small cylinder, you know, on the lathe turned on it, so it'll fit right in the feed hole of the dish. If you take the commercial feed out, want to put your own in, and then you can run your feed or waveguide or coax right through the center of it, and then put a splash plate reflector or something looking back into the dish. It's really, at that point, it's just simple. All you need to do is get the radiating element at the focal point of the dish. So think about it. Yeah. The mounting, you could mount to the edges, the lips of the dish with struts back to, you know, uh, a mounting frame, mounting bracket. You have to remember, you have to remember though, when you get into these higher frequencies and these, you know, beam widths get narrower and narrower and narrower, you have to worry about not just azimuth, but also elevation. So that's why I prefer, as you saw in the photos, and on my QRZ page, it's got the real nice photo. I wish I had it here. It's on the page. You can get it. It's the the full 241 gig station, and you can see that I just used a rifle scope on that. So instead of having to do reloads to go and sight in the scope, I have to take gel cells and use them to out in the backyard to run the station and sight in the scopes. And at those frequencies, you will have some problems with parallax. You think about it for a minute. If your beam width is a half a degree, you do not want to put the crosshairs of the scope on the center of the dish that's 500 feet away. You actually want to center the scope on the crosshairs of the other scope. Right?
So
because
maybe
it's
conventional imaging system.
Yeah, because as you get farther and farther apart, right, or closer together, you don't want to have a point where you think you're looking here, but you're really doing this, with my hands trying to, and
Makes sense.
as soon as you get far apart, and everybody thinks in terms of azimuth, but here you have to think in terms of 3 dimensions.
Right, I'll see if I can bring something up. Thanks.
No problem.
Any other questions? Well, Brian, thank you very much. It's been very informative and really enjoyed having you here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Go ahead. No, we've already heard, so. No, you're free to go home. Well,
This business of doing it as a group is a thought to do something, you know, where we're not paying for the vision. So that's the issue we've got. Dennis, so Dennis is gonna. I'll have my clear. Now they get. But the other thing. They can work really well. And there's all kinds of times in which but they're about making yourself. You get on the phone. Okay, now. It's that sort of thing. So when it comes to putting up and down and everything, people do job. But I think with combination of doing the conference call, we can do a lot of measuring.
Something I wondered, and I just like to tell this is, you know, I can't do this for the secretary, but would we want to have like a mentor group going on in conjunction with the meeting? Because sometimes I think like people come to the meeting who are new hands, and then we have like a program for people who are like really advanced teams. Then like if we could set an antenna outside in conjunction with, so maybe like once I'm not secretary, like if I switch positions.
So, in July,
Yeah,
that meeting is all about getting the new hands in the air.
right.
Tom's gonna set up his 897 back there, and David's gonna be, he's got a rig and antennas on his car, we'll use 20 meters, so that'll be one. And you know, the programs I come up with like this one is, you know, what struck me. But what I will try to do in the future is, you know, maybe other meetings could be, you know, target with a new hand.
But I almost wonder, like, if we could, and again, like, it's hard for me to do, well, I'm still secretary, but like, if we could have someone who, because, and I'm willing to take this on if I'm not. You know, if I rotate into a different position, or like, who just says, okay, I'm the new hand person, I'm gonna stand outside with the radio. And just is dedicated to, regardless of what's going on.
We could do a program on portable antennas.
I didn't have my.
Yeah.
Will show you.
And that's what we want to do, get pictures.
Camera.
Installing their.
Right.
Because they got them in the tree.
Well,
have
when-
them off in
when we
foundation,
do-
Things like that.
when they do
I should mention that too. Send us how you did it. Or your antenna fell down, you're putting it back up.
Right.
Whatever.
Just getting the people, put it in the house.
Yeah. And I know Lauren is dealing with that now, so they're just moving up to a private. And so she's behind the regular 100 watt getting. So,
So we can.
yeah, we're good, because I just connected them, so. And I think Ken said, just unplug the owls and then. And then he also said leave the string with the owls, because that's how far apart they go. So. I can hear you. Yeah. So it's kind of, I was just calling Daryl. I'm always curious. Right. Yeah. Right. No. So that's different. And see, that's something completely different.
Yes, well, I mean, one of the metrics I'd be walking into that, but if we can't, really get it started with group metric and go further.
Well, but I could just ask them like, and then side I started going to general to see what and I just wanted to, and some I have so that, like, we're not. That's right. And I don't talk about student, and that's not the top. And wow. And so the.
So that's where I am. One of the things that's very helpful is,
So it's gonna be a big file.